Welcome back to the Gruber Morning Show. I'm Pete Gruber.
And I'm Zane Courtney.
And we are doing the pre-show portion right now. And you see a picture behind you there. That is the famous T0 first electric sports car. And there are only 3 in existence on the planet. For the longest time, we owned one. I bought one in, 2017, I think it was. And could not find the other 2. And they have suddenly emerged. They are at the Peterson Museum in Los Angeles on Wilshire Boulevard. And you can actually see the 2 other T0s. Ours, sadly, doesn't have a shell on it like this. It was a Piontech fiberglass shell. It went through a fire. We've got a frame. We painted it yellow. And we put batteries back in where the batteries were in the car to show how they squeezed 28 lead-acid 12-volt batteries into this car.
That has to be a heavy car.
There were 12 in each door, so the doors really weren't functional. You had to do the Dukes of Hazzard climbing inside thing.
Oh, hey. Well, it's a race car.
Yeah, I suppose. And so the T0, one of them at Peterson Auto Museum has a trailer behind it, and there's a very good reason for that trailer. In 1997, when these cars were created, there were no charging stations, so when you ran out of juice, you basically had to either tow it back to your charging method, or you had this trailer that you were pulling behind you, which had a 2-stroke engine in it, and provided DC power to continue to drive.
We showed that on another episode, didn't we, of a T0 with the trailer? I believe it's the one at Peterson, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's correct.
We did a good piece on the T0 with the trailer as well, and there's a longer video to come.
Nice.
Cool.
Fun
All right.
stuff. Well, good morning, Darren on YouTube, and to everybody. Again, please leave your comments. Let us know where you're coming from, both whether, what platform you're on. Let us know where you're coming from. We'd love to get to see you guys. Big news is we're actually going to be potentially moving our showtime following the new year. So we're letting everybody know now, please stay tuned. We're gonna be moving our showtime back 1 hour. So if might help with our lunch breaks, might help with whatever it is. Let us know your feedback on that. Again, that's gonna be start of the new year. We're gonna be moving our showtime back 1 hour.
Perfect. Let me go over here to the social media guys. I'll see if I can get our IT manager so we can get this laptop functioning. And should I just call Nick, guys, and bring him over, because it's gonna need passwords. It's going to need passwords, and if you pull the power cord, the PC goes dead. So let's see if you can get this thing running. To get on the file server so I can see the agenda for this show this morning.
Where do you see that? I'm trying to...
Just open up any file. Now go to the S drive, and we're not on the network.
Do you want to answer some questions while we're...
Sure, we can do that. We also, by the way, while I'm standing here, the first agenda item, which I happen to remember, is that coal is going away, and by 2027, there are some charts, which we'll post here in a minute, that show that solar power is actually trending up at a pace where by 2027, it will outperform coal, and which is declining. Hydroelectric is oddly enough declining as well, although that's reasonably clean. Are we in?
No, we're going to have to call Nick.
Let's call Nick, sure. So that's one of the first things that we wanted to cover with you, but we do have some questions in the meantime that we can entertain. And looks like just looking in. So is it true that if just one of those cells fail in that huge battery pack, and we're talking about a Tesla at this point, probably a Model S, a Model X.
Or a Roadster.
Yeah, or a Roadster, that if just one cell fails, it will no longer take a charge. The reason that is true is the battery safety management systems in the Teslas are designed such that 1 out of 7,000 cells can affect the willingness of the charging system to function in the car. And the fundamental reason is if you have a resistive lithium-ion cell and you overcharge it, it will heat up and it will catch fire. And then all bets are off, because once it ignites the rest of the cells, you've got a major fire under your hand or on your hands. So yes, it is true that the battery safety systems in Teslas are designed to prevent any charge greater than the most resistive cell in that pack. Now, how often do cells go resistive? It's infrequent, which is a good thing, because otherwise you would be constantly changing cells out of a pack of 7,000. And let me rephrase that. We don't change the cells. There are two things that happen. When you get a Tesla that has a failing battery pack and you take it to a service center, their only option will be exchange the battery pack, which costs around $22,000. And it looks like we've got Nick, our IT manager here. Nick, if you come around toward the front, you can take and put it on the floor there and bring us back online. Excuse us for a moment here, our audience. My laptop decided that Microsoft decided that it was time for some updates that I don't want, and it prevailed. So my computer suddenly went dead, and it began to do all sorts of things that I wasn't prepared for.
But that's why we've got user comments. So thank you guys so much for sending your comments, so we can jump right into those.
And timing was terrible, of course. It was right at the beginning of our podcast.
Yeah.
So to finish off the question, why does one cell affect the entire car? It's battery safety management. It's a good thing because it prevents fire. And the second option now is, Tesla's option is battery replacement. There are independent shops like ours that are actually able to open up the pack, find the offending cell, that one resistive cell out of 7,104 in a Tesla Model S, for example, or find the battery management board, the electronics that failed, and repair it. Close that pack back up, and the car continues to drive.
Great. Well, and this next question goes right into that. I wanted to add something, but this is more important. So from Dormend on a different
Instagram.
platform. Oh, is it Instagram? Oh,
Yeah,
excuse me.
above.
So from Instagram, from Dormend, what does a service like that cost? You mentioned it's about $20,000 for Tesla to bring it into a Tesla service center and
Sure.
get that fixed.
Well, Tesla's options are a brand new battery pack, which is about $22,000, or a refurbished pack, which is in the neighborhood of $16,000 to $18,000. The cost from our shop, which is an actual repair of that battery pack, is in the neighborhood of $5,000 to $7,000. And the reason it's so expensive is we literally have a needle in a haystack situation. We have to find that one cell out of 7,000. But the biggest problem is the amount of work it takes to open up the battery pack, preserve that top lid, which we would love to just peel off like a can of a can of sardines. Sorry, I got cigars on my mind. Thank you, Nick. And so we have to do body work after we've taken it apart. We have to reseal it. And anyway, so that's why it costs so much money, and it's very time consuming. But it can be repaired. That's the good news.
I think the biggest thing, or another point to mention, is why not just replace the cell itself? And that's mostly due to battery chemistry.
Well, the reason that, well, take a Tesla Roadster, for example. You've got 6,831 lithium-ion vape cigarette cells stacked vertically in 11 sheets. They are inside two clamshells that hold them in place, and then there's a potting compound that's been injected in between the clamshells for thermal management. And then you've got cooling jackets that run through and touch every single cell. So if you were to attempt to remove one of those cells, you would have to chisel, chip, and drill, and you would most likely damage the cooling jackets that are touching each cell, very tight spaces. And the final ingredient is it's completely unnecessary because there's a fusible link on both sides of the battery, the plus and minus cell polarities. And all you need to do is cut that little thin wire, and that cell is now out of circuit. It's no longer draining the brick, which is a collection of parallel cells. And so it's much easier to just simply disable it by snipping off the bonding wires, as they call them, or the fusible links.
And that tends to have almost zero influence on battery range for anybody.
Absolutely zero, because the car never realizes it lost 1 out of 7,000 cells. One has gone MIA. It's so negligible, the battery management system does not notice it. You can even cut more than that. In some cases, we've cut up to 4 or 5 per brick. And that's very rare, though, because usually it's a single cell failure.
That's awesome. And a quick video comment from TikTok. Do you make new battery packs?
You know what? If you can entertain the questions, I'm going to bring up the agenda here for a second. And
so let's see. From YouTube, from Freckles X20, Daryl from Wisconsin. Putting a Tesla home charger in, what type of wires needed? And we were kind of talking about this earlier. You estimated somewhere around an 8-gauge wire.
Well, the point there is, the first thing you need to look at is the specifications on the charger. Are you putting in an 80 amp charger, for example, 60 amp charger? Any of those amperages have a corresponding wire size that needs to be addressed. A 50 amp wire, for example, is an 8-gauge wire. And then you have other considerations in your home. How far is your circuit breaker panel box from the point of where you're going to mount that charger? And how many obstructions do you have? Now, this is where electrical costs come in. I see this all the time on social media. Can somebody recommend an electrician and tell me what it'll cost to put in a 240-volt charger?
No, no one can tell you.
There are too many variables. Any electrician is going to have to come out on site. They're going to have to look for all of those variables and then quote that job.
Right. And so you really have to know your house well. You see how far away the breaker box is compared to even some 240-volt outlets. If some people have some of those laundry machine outlets that they have in the garage or near the garage, a lot of Tesla owners or EV owners will tend to siphon off of those and use the included Tesla 240-volt charger. Yeah, exactly what you were saying, Pete.
All right.
From John Lester 621, do you have any plans to franchise? Now we've talked a little bit about plans for scalability in regards to Gruber Motor Companies, and the answer is maybe. It's a good answer.
Well, the logistics of franchising are daunting. There are a number of issues. One is finding staff and finding knowledgeable people to staff that facility is the biggest challenge, because there aren't any schools, there aren't any learning institutions that are yet cranking out competent resources that can do this type of work. Franchising also often implies, well, we have the facility. What we want to do is become part of your organization with a franchise arrangement. Fast food operates that way, for example.
Exactly.
You don't own the McDonald's. You own the building, perhaps, but the franchise is something you're constantly paying for. We have the same problem there. We just do not have the staff. No one in the independent space currently has the resources to begin a franchising operation, send people out to get them trained, or bring people back to a training facility. Now, the future, of course, is going to be exactly that. There will be a lot of independent shops. Most likely there will be franchise operations, and somebody eventually will solve those problems. But for now, it's daunting. And our goal at this point is to continue to grow in Phoenix, Arizona. The type of work that we do fundamentally is we don't do low-tech auto. We don't do the simple things. You can get audio system upgrades in your neighborhood, PPF installation, paint improvement, tires, brakes, suspension, all of those things. You don't need to ship your car cross-country. When that becomes important is when you've got a Tesla Model S that has that one cell and there's nobody in your area that is doing the type of work we do. Then it makes sense to transport the car to us. And financially it makes sense, because $5,000 to $7,000 with shipping costs included keeps you at about $10,000 to $12,000. The alternative is a $22,000 battery pack replacement, so it's still cost effective.
Exactly.
With Tesla Roadsters, it's the same thing. Very few shops can do what we do. And so people send us cars from all over the United States, and they even send us assemblies from out of the country. They can't quite ship the car because that's a logistics nightmare between customs and taxes and shipping costs and delays.
But you can send an assembly.
You can send the power electronics module to have it rebuilt. So that's how we handle the franchising question.
From Key from Cali on Instagram, I own a dealership in Atlanta, mostly sells EVs. This is kind of like our friend from, was it Sweden or Finland? Who,
yes, yeah.
Has a dealership. Do you train techs for all EV upgrades?
The same answer. We just don't have the staff to train. Our people that are working in Gruber Motor Company, repairing the cars and doing the electronics, just don't have the bandwidth to include some training sessions for people that would fly in and you know, would like to learn what we do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're learning on the job as well.
Yeah, and you know, it would be nice if, like most businesses, when you have demand, you simply hire the resources necessary to fill the demand. We can't hire these types of people quickly enough. We can barely keep up with the volume of repairs that come in. And then you have to oftentimes home grow them. There's a long learning curve. So at this point, yeah, it's not possible for us to train other companies. Now, we will eventually be offering YouTube videos, tutorials. And in fact, our social media team has been working on that format. And now you'll be able to actually have online training for the various things that you would need to become proficient at repairing EVs.
Well, that's incredibly helpful. I mean, that could go even beyond EVs.
It
to
could.
be able to just have solid electronics repair and, you know, that's extremely valuable information. So you heard it here, folks. Be on the lookout from Gruber Motors Company, and we'd love to share that information with you guys. And that answers our Instagram question from George. How can we learn ECU programming?
Same thing, yes, yeah. We will have tutorials eventually. By the way, for those of you that are joining us a little bit later, the picture behind us is a T0, one of 3. It was the car that arguably started the EV revolution. Without that, Tesla would not exist, because both Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpenning and Elon Musk later on went to the company that made these 3 cars with a federal grant, saw that they were able to beat Lamborghinis, Ferraris, and McLarens at Laguna Seca with a 0 to 60 in 4-second time slip, and asked if they were going to build this car, produce this EV sports car. The answer was a resounding no each time. They said, we're an engineering company, and they both said, well, do you mind if we do it? When Elon asked the same question later on, they said, well, you can do that, but there are already a couple guys doing it, and that's how Elon got acquainted with those 2 founders of Tesla, Mark Tarpenning and Martin Eberhard. So that T0 is a legendary car. If you want to actually see one, we have a cutaway version of one mounted on our wall in our service center, which shows where the batteries were placed in the car. If you want to see one that's completely intact with the shell on it, the Peterson Auto Museum in Los Angeles has 2 of these cars. And the Peterson Museum is just a great place to visit, regardless of whether you're going to see the T0 or not. There's a SpaceX and Tesla exhibit now that takes you through the history of Tesla and SpaceX.
Which we also have some content of. So be sure to check all of that out on the YouTube channel. We've also got a post show after that initial Peterson Auto Museum opening that we got to talk a little bit about that. So be sure to check out some of our content about the Peterson Museum, the T0, and everything about that. Also, keep leaving us your comments. Please let us know where you're from. Let us know what your questions are. We love to be able to answer your questions.
And if you're seeing a little bit more detail on our faces this morning, we are now streaming in 4K on YouTube. And we realize that we need to clean up our environment a bit, like our table here has wrinkles in it. So we're going to be working on that with 4K.
Maybe a little New Year's facelift, New Year, new me. Hey,
all right,
but
just
this
to let you guys know that we're not actually truly streaming in 4K. We're set to 4K on our cameras, and we've increased the frame rate, but we're downscaling it to 1080p. But it is much higher quality.
Yeah, same difference.
All right, so it's much higher quality, not quite 4K yet. When it gets to 4K, we're going to have to get a makeup department, right, guys?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so Lucid Motors is in the news. They're offering discount as demand shrinks.
Hey, well, Tesla decided to put some Christmas specials out, so I guess Lucid did too.
Yeah. This one looks a bit concerning because what's this demand shrinking all about? And well, the reasons they claim is that some people that had placed pre-orders for the Lucid Air, for example, are abandoning their orders. And the way the company is responding is by offering discounts up to 10% to get those customers back on board. it had even gotten to the point where some of these Lucid Air vehicles are now showing up on auction sites like Bring a Trailer and selling for well under their window sticker price. Now, in conjunction with that, and it's later on in our podcast, Elon actually made a statement just within the last 24 hours that he is convinced that Rivian and Lucid may be headed for bankruptcy. And reasons being is it's very difficult to ramp up production in the automotive world. Very few companies have successfully done it without some form of assistance. And his feeling is that the ugly B word may be in Lucid and Rivian's future if they can't get a handle on their costs.
Yeah, time will tell. I know Rivian is still running at somewhat of a net loss per vehicle since they're actually underpriced based on what goes into those. So assuming that every reservation holder can get their hands on one and be able to actually pay those off, then we might be able to see them pull out of that. But yeah, it's difficult to say. No easy way around that. It is hard.
It looks like Darren N. from YouTube, one of our faithful members of the audience, asks off topic, did you guys hear about that fusion breakthrough? It sounds like a game changer. We have not, but maybe that's something we can include in our next podcast.
I had a little bit of, I haven't looked too much into that. I knew that something about a fusion breakthrough had happened, and it's a similar thing with solid state battery tech where, you know, I'll believe it when I see it for the most part. But that is extremely exciting because that is a wonderful source of energy. And really what it comes down to is there's tons of different ways to create energy. We already know the best ways to make a lot of this energy, as we discussed earlier, that coal's on the decline and solar PV, and I believe that's actually in regards to like Powerwall battery style storage technology, as well as wind and solar are on the rise. And it's funny, actually from hydropower is also on the decline, as Pete had mentioned earlier. But nonetheless, all of it's going to come down to whether or not you can store that energy. And we have a segment, I believe, on solid-state batteries.
We do, yeah. There's a company that I just became aware of called StoreDot. And it claims that they have taken the electric car battery charging from hours to minutes. And they actually have an independent test lab that has verified these results. It has verified this new battery technology. Now, it is a lithium iron battery, or LFP. The F in that acronym is for ferro, which of course is iron. And it appears to be a pouch battery rather than the cylindrical cells that we're so used to with the Tesla vehicles. Now, there are a lot of companies, of course, working on battery technology. This is one of them. They don't have a product quite yet, but they call this extremely fast charging product the XFC battery, extreme fast charging. And it will be available by 2024, they claim. It will be capable of accepting 100 miles of charging in 5 minutes.
Wow.
Real quick, guys, I'm going to go and restart TikTok. We seem to be having some problems on there.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Excuse me.
Today's just a fun day of Murphy's
Technical
Law
issues,
on our... Sorry, everybody. You know what's funny? So we were just talking in the last show about 1 megawatt charging coming from Tesla in response to the Semi coming out, which they're also going to be sharing with the Cybertruck. And it's just so funny to me, and I love where we're going with this, so that if you combine this, you know, a lot of people are still saying that solid state's, you know, years and years away. It may be a few years, but I don't think it's going to be, you know, maybe a decade. I bet, I'd put money on that, by a decade, we're going to see a huge increase, if not a standardization of some kind of solid state. Just because of guys like StoreDot.
It keeps coming, yeah.
And iron rust batteries are also another thing, because ultimately what it comes down to is there a way to be able to create a solid version of your cathode? And what they found in some batteries, and especially in larger quantity batteries, so something like a Powerwall, you could actually use something like rust as your cathode, which is already oxidized iron.
Yeah, which is plentiful. By the way, TikTok, thank you for joining us again. We had some technical difficulties.
Welcome back.
Welcome, exactly. And again, give us just send us your questions, and we will entertain them.
Darren from YouTube had a funny question.
A
tax write-off?
I hope so. If I throw this out the window, I would certainly like for it to not cost us very much. All right.
Freckles on YouTube, could you buy bad packs from Tesla and refurbish them for resale?
Not really. The reason being is bad packs indicate resistive cells, and there is no cost-effective way to open a cell and resolve the resistive problem that occurred. There's also a chemical process that takes place once they go resistive, which is destructive to the cell. But having said that, there are companies, and Redwood Materials is one of them, that will gladly take those cells, recycle them, and get you into over a 90% waste stream where the product goes back out as raw materials, cobalt, lithium, stainless steel. It looks like Sandy Munro is back in the news.
Hey, we love Sandy.
Yeah, and a magazine article picked up a comment that he made apparently. He was blown away by Tesla's profit margin in comparison to other automakers, especially Toyota. So now we've got Tesla and Toyota here pitted against each other.
We mentioned that a bit ago about how in the same quarter you had Tesla and Toyota make the same amount of profit, but Tesla sold fewer vehicles. Toyota sold somewhere around 1.2 million. Tesla sold about 300,000 vehicles in the same time period, and yet came out about the same profit.
And, as they say in this article, most of the legacy auto manufacturers took their time transitioning to EVs due to fear of losing money. That was a pretty scary concept, How can EVs be popular after GM with the EV1?
Right.
It was
the Bolt and
right.
all other controversies, sure.
And as they point out, that fear is now costing them. It's leaving them behind, and they're not in the forefront of that technology. They say Tesla produces just 4 fully electric vehicle models. By the way, they're wrong. It's 5. The Roadster needs to be put into that list.
There's just not enough of them yet.
And
we'll get there, but
and they will be launching their semi-truck, or they have already actually. So there is an additional one. And then the Cybertruck is coming in 2023. Now, Tesla has plenty of free cash flow. It's like $3 billion of free cash flow in Q3 of 2023. It's a substantial amount of money. So Toyota, how are they going to compete? Well, here's some statistics. They lead the world in gas car production, but those are dying. In 2022, Toyota generated 2,625,000 sales with a profit margin of $1,273 per vehicle. Tesla created 344,000 vehicles. Now remember, that's a substantial difference, 2,625,000 versus 344,000 for Tesla. But the profit per vehicle for Tesla compared to Toyota at $1,200 per vehicle was $9,700 per vehicle. So, as Sandy points out, that's nearly a 9-time profit or a 9x profit per vehicle for Tesla. The net income between the two companies is the same, despite Toyota making about 8 times as many vehicles. So the upshot here is it's definitely paying off for Tesla to reduce costs and improve their vehicles over time.
I will give Toyota some credit, though. Some, just a little bit. One, they've always been a pioneer for hybridization. And some people will complain, Sandy Munro included, that with hybrids, you get the worst of both worlds. And sometimes you get the best of both worlds. But nonetheless, Toyota has always been on that forefront to bring some form of electrification into their vehicles for the sake of gas mileage, or now with the Toyota Tundra and the upcoming Tacoma, it's going to be more for torque. You'll get the same gas mileage as you would in, say, the gas version, but now with about 100 more pound-feet of torque, something like that. So fun stuff. And speaking of the new Tacoma, that we've gotten some statistics. Now this is kind of taken for a grain of salt. I heard from one source that they seemed pretty reputable, but nonetheless, grain of salt. That in the new Tacomas, you're going to have a similar hybrid style powertrain. You're also going to have a full EV version of the Tacoma. We saw that revealed last year around, I think it was December, when Toyota revealed their whole concept lineup for their whole BZ platform for their electric vehicles. That Tacoma actually looked pretty much production ready. Everything else was more concept, like the new Cruiser, the FJ Cruiser electric. Some of that might have been more concept, but the Tacoma actually kind of seemed ready to hop right off the line. So we could be seeing that electrified Tacoma coming in the next year. I believe the 2024 model year is going to be the facelift, and so we're probably going to see something like a Super Bowl commercial for that new Tacoma. They always release these that kind of news early 2023. So in their defense, in Toyota's defense, against something like Tesla, Tesla makes what are most considered luxury vehicles, including the Model 3, even though now it's considered the California Camry. And Toyota makes the family-friendly normal car, the regular Camry. They make even the Tacoma, and they have repute in their build quality. So it's going to be a matter of time before we see these two kind of converge, and Toyota get with the program a little bit and see more of that electrification.
Have you noticed every week or two another manufacturer pops up with an EV announcement? I
saw
one this morning. Subaru, I forget what they were announcing. Yeah, it's amazing how many of these ICE manufacturers are jumping on the bandwagon.
I actually just saw it's the Subaru equivalent of the BZ4X. I wish I could remember what the name is off the top of my head. I actually saw one on a car carrier the other day coming through Tempe.
Speaking of that, apparently an electrified Corvette called the E-Ray was briefly revealed last night before Chevrolet took down the website.
Ooh.
Maybe it was a premature release. One of the marketing people was a bit too anxious, but at least one magazine grabbed some screenshots, and it gives us a pretty good idea of what we can expect. But General Motors has made it well known over the past several months that the automaker is going all in on electric vehicles, and Chevy is slated to play an integral role in this. There's been some speculation over what exactly GM's EV portfolio will look like. So far, GM has touted its EV for everyone strategy by carrying consumer favorite models into the EV area, like releasing the $30,000 Chevy Equinox EV, the Blazer EV, and the Silverado EV pickup. But what about the iconic Corvette, known to many as America's sports car? That would be a cool conversion. So we'll have to wait and see whether this pops back up on the GM website. We have a picture of it, actually. Can we pop that up, guys, and at least get a screenshot, or get the screenshot that was grabbed before they took it back down?
It would be cool to see GM's equivalent of a Tesla Roadster. That's really what that could be. Yeah. I mean, look at that. That's beautiful. And it takes the same body style as the mid-engine Corvettes that have been popular over the last few years, but I think it's gorgeous.
It definitely has that wedge-shaped design comparable to the Lamborghinis. So yeah, this could be a highly successful vehicle.
GM's been really killing it. You mentioned the Equinox EV, and that's honestly one that I'm personally very interested in. Amongst everything else, even the Blazer SS EV, and that thing is supposed to be their kind of sport SUV in the lineup. But the Equinox EV, to me, is going to be a game changer, because that's going to fit in with the ID4. It's going to fit in against the Model Y. It's going to be a more mass appeal product. And if that does well, we're going to see a much bigger adoption rate, I think. So the Equinox EV, no one's talking about it too much yet, but I got good feelings about that one specifically, and other GM models, including GMC with the Denali. Right. Pickup truck that's also coming out based on the Silverado EV.
The speculation is that Corvette may receive its own electric sub-brand, complete with a four-door coupe and crossover. Oh. There are also several mentions of EV Camaro and the Escalade EV spin-offs.
A coupe Camaro would be very cool regardless. I don't know how I feel about a coupe Corvette, but hey, we'll see what happens.
Well, they're claiming that this Corvette E-Ray will make its grand debut in the summer of 2023. So stay tuned. We'll see if the Chevy faithful will have a cool sports car EV, and if that happens, it may even beat Tesla with the new Roadster. Because remember, Tesla currently does not have, in production at least, a sports car. So GM may be first.
You know, I just had a thought too, and I'll run it by you. So imagine you've got the Roadster and the Corvette. These are the two EV sports cars that everyone's kind of looking at. And then General Motors decides, hey, let's not make an electric Malibu. Let's not make an electric Impala. Let's make a four-door sedan Camaro to go against the Model 3. That, to me, seems like a pretty winning move. One, because even though the Camaro is iconic as a two-door coupe, I think that would be a kind of winning thing because now they don't have to put too much into these older models. I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe they'll decide to go with an electric Impala instead to compete in that sort of small sedan segment. But the sedan's been going down in sales. The only profitable sedan that we've seen in the last few years is the Model 3. And we've seen that across the U.S. and Europe.
Sports cars are tough. You know, you've got basically a two-seater, two-door, and you know, look at the Dodge Viper, for example. Here was a car that was a technological masterpiece. Styling, they hit it out of the park, but they struggled for the entire production run with that car because it just wasn't the type of car that the average person would buy for their daily commute.
Right.
It's a tough one. We have a situation currently brewing where there is a Tesla Roadster that is pretty famous. It actually, 10 years ago, traveled the world, and on EV, of course, finding ways to charge, and it's VIN number 507. This car became pretty famous because it went all the way around the world. It was like 127 days that it did this in, and it was the longest route at that time of a 100% electric car, and the longest trip alone behind the wheel of an electric car, so it broke a number of records.
Wow.
So VIN 507 became pretty famous, up to the point where a German museum in Munich asked the owner if they can display it for a year there. Raphael de Mastri, who owns this, said absolutely, and hundreds of thousands of visitors came to this exhibition to see this famous Tesla Roadster. And the museum asked if they can extend the display time, 6 months. So Raphael agreed. The problem was the team that was used to taking care of the Roadster, charging, etiquette, and all that, was replaced, and the new team was not properly trained on charging a Tesla Roadster. And everybody knows that a Tesla Roadster, if it's not charged, will go into a coma and it goes dead. So this poor car actually ended up dying in the museum in a state that is called a bricked state. Now, had the car been here in the United States, they would have shipped it to us, we would have revived it, recovered it. That's what we do. We save Tesla Roadsters. But being in Europe, it was very difficult for them to find someone to do that in the amount of time that it takes to do that. About 6 months or so is your safe window. Well, anyway, this car is now coming to the United States. It is, again, following the tradition of being emission-free transport. And Raphael found a clipper ship, a sailboat, non-mechanized, mind you, that is coming to the United States to pick up coffee, and it's empty from Europe to the U.S. So he talked them into taking his emission-free car in the cargo hold and bringing it to Florida. It is actually going to be at the dock today or tomorrow. We've had some issue with customs. And it will then be transported to Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona, to our shop. In conjunction with the local Tesla service center, we're going to put another battery pack in this car so it can continue its adventures.
Oh, that's incredible. Oh, that's so cool.
So VIN 507 will be in our shop hopefully within the next week or two.
Wow.
And we will do a lot of social media sharing with you so you guys can see this very special, legendary car.
And I'm assuming he came with the car, yes, to see where it's going to go?
He did. He will be in Florida. The Florida Tesla Roadster Owners Club will be meeting the car, so there will be some fanfare there. We're not sure whether we're going to be able to send one of our social media people at this point, but once it gets to Phoenix, of course, we will continue the promotion and some of the press on this car.
I can't wait. That's going to be hilarious.
The ship, by the way, was supposed to have docked and unloaded over a week ago, but the problem was the wind wasn't cooperating. They were facing a headwind rather than a tailwind, so the ship was basically stuck in the ocean until winds were favorable enough where they could bring the car to Florida.
That's so funny. And so, wow, so they are, so they were supposed to be here last week.
They were,
And
yes.
then I see.
Yeah. But you know, what I find fascinating is the cooperation with Tesla. They made a battery pack available in short order. They're also very committed to this particular car because of its history and because of the number of records that this car has actually broke and will continue to break. So it looks like, do we have some questions we want to capture?
I was going to say that. We got a lot
All right.
of questions to get through, and we're already at almost 50 minutes.
Woo!
Okay,
That's
all
okay.
right.
Hey, we got some extra time today.
TikTok, are you hanging in there with us? I know we lost you for a while. Be patient with us.
We got some YouTube comments from Core Glass. You know Core Glass. Can you upgrade the onboard charger on an older Model S to 22 kilowatt AC power?
You know, what's easy to do with a Tesla Model S is if you have a single charger and you're limited to 40 amps is to get a second charger, and that can easily be installed. The firmware update takes care of the updates, and now you can charge at 80 amps charge.
Oh,
So that's one of the easiest way to do that.
that's hilarious. You would think that that would be internal to the vehicle. But
Well,
it's-
they actually sit underneath the rear seat. And the reason we know that well, when we were buying flood damaged cars, that's the lowest part in the cabin. And invariably, if any water got into the cabin, those chargers were toast. They were floating, basically.
Oh.
And then in between that is a high voltage junction box, which is the part that redirects DC input charge versus AC input charge.
That's hilarious. Let's see, we had another one from YouTube Shorts from Miguel Gonzalez. What is the most mile loss you guys have ever seen on a Model 3 from use? For example, a Model 3 long range with 50K miles.
You know, any of the Teslas, when you have a resistive cell, will have a rapid range loss. Sometimes it's every charge. I know that on the Roadsters, the worst we've seen was every time they went to charge it, they lost 10 miles range, 10 to 12 miles range. The same is true with the Model S's. It depends on how far along that resistive cell is and how uncooperative it is. But again, the battery safety management system in the car will only allow a charge to the lowest cell in that collection of 7,000 some odd cells, which is a good thing because that's a safety issue. We don't want to overcharge that cell and have it cause or catch on fire.
Also from YouTube Shorts from Ron Ulis, the vlogger. Can your car travel to Canada? I don't know. I guess they're asking if we'll ever do a road trip up to Canada.
You know, there's a guy by the name of Kyle Connor that's one of our YouTube influencers. He's done a number of videos here with us. He does these road trips and he loves them. He's got a Model 3. I think he's got a Y now too, and he also
He's got a Rivian. He's got a.
Does he? Yeah.
He just
Yeah,
bought
that's
a
right,
cheap.
yeah.
He bought the cheapest Model Leaf he could find.
But if you find him on YouTube, the name of his channel is, help me here, guys.
Out of Spec Reviews.
Out of Spec Reviews. There you go.
They've got a few out of spec channels, but yeah, Kyle Connor and Out of Spec. Those guys are phenomenal, and they're in Boulder, Colorado, not too far from my hometown.
And he's very knowledgeable. That's the nice part. You know, he will tell you the backstory on any of these cars. The one that I liked the best was when he went to KNDI in Texas. They had just opened up a distribution center, and they actually let him take one of their little four-door grocery getter sedans, which at the time with tax credits was down around $10,000 for a brand new EV with a 5-year warranty. But yeah, he gave a stellar review. He was pretty impressed with the car. And yeah, it was well worth watching.
That's awesome. And actually, on the idea of driving up to Canada, the guys from TFL, the Fast Lane, another YouTube channel, also out of Colorado, funny enough, but they actually got an F-150 Lightning all the way to Alaska. And they did a giant road trip going all the way from Colorado up into California and then up into Alaska and back. So that's a great journey to watch as well.
So there was a question. Can you guys go back up just a second? Because it was a great question, and I wanted to answer that. I think it was...
just before the car traveling to Canada.
Yeah.
Is it further up or further down?
Further down. Yeah, Anthony Ward. There you go. The question from Anthony on TikTok. Welcome, Anthony. What made us start working on Teslas? Well, I'll try to make it a short story. My wife and I were driving Priuses. We were beginning to get interested in going more green, right? And the Prius was a great way to do that. You know, you've got 50 miles what am I trying to say here?
Yeah, range, electric
the
range.
range. And for about a mile or so, you could go on an electric motor, and that just fascinated me at the time. So the Priuses got older, and you got to be careful with Priuses because when you get to 6 to 10 years old, the battery goes bad. Now you've got a $6,000 to $7,000 repair, and we wanted to avoid that. So we wanted to get rid of those, and I thought, you know, I like this concept of going battery electric vehicle, rather than just going for a mile or so and having an ICE engine in the car, which kind of defeats the purpose of having, you know, something that goes a little bit more green. And I looked around and I couldn't find anything until I went on eBay and I found a Tesla Roadster. And it was for sale, contacted the seller. He was a personal assistant for a celebrity, and he says, I can't tell you who it is, but you may figure it out. And I did. It was George Clooney's car, a 2008 Tesla Roadster. So I had my plane ticket. I was going to fly there, take a look at it, close the deal. And it occurred to me, I've got a friend here in Phoenix that has a Tesla Roadster. Let me ask him what he thinks of it. And I contacted Stefan, and we talked about his car. And he said, you know, I've got 2 little girls, and in a Roadster, the passenger seat airbag doesn't turn off. And for the safety of my little girls, we're going to get rid of the car. So we struck a deal, and I got my lightning green Roadster, and it was my daily driver for about a year. And it wasn't until one morning I was taking out my lunch pail. I had the trunk open, and one of our field engineers that works in our power services division repairing uninterruptible power systems, lighting inverters, all over the United States, said, what is that black box? I said, it's an inverter. And he said, you know, we repair those. And I don't know why it didn't occur to me a year earlier, but that was a paradigm shift that convinced me we've been in the Tesla repair business all along because the technology in a Tesla is identical to what's in critical power. You have a DC storage system, in the case of a UPS, large cabinets full of lead acid batteries, and or wet cells for that matter in a room somewhere, and then you have an inverter that converts all that DC to 3-phase AC, which is the same thing that happens in that Tesla. Well, to make a long story short, I hired a guy within 2 months that claimed he can fix Tesla Roadsters here locally, Sean Scherer. And he joined us as a tech manager on the power services side. And I encouraged him to develop some Tesla Roadster business since we seem to be able to repair these things. We got our first customer out of the Bay Area. He was faced with a $10,000 PEM replacement in his car. We said, you know what, we think we can repair this. So he shipped us the car, we repaired it, not only repaired it, but rebuilt it for about $2,300. And the next thing you know, the word spread quickly. There's an alternative to Tesla for Roadster electronics repair. And that's what got us started in the Tesla service business. Now, for a short time, before we had enough cash flow and enough volume of business, we were doing repairs on employee cars, ICE vehicles. And we were fooling around with Priuses and other BEVs like the Chevy Bolt. And you know what we found is, in order to get really good at anything, you need to have laser focus. And we began to specialize on that Tesla Roadster, did a lot of reverse engineering. We developed schematics, drawings, test point, procedures, all of that, expecting that at some point Tesla would provide that information to us. Well, it turns out they didn't have very much of that. So what we did was vital. And today, we have probably the largest store of documentation for the Roadster, have successfully reverse engineered most of the components and most of the parts in the Roadster, and we're continuing that type of repair. Now, we've of course branched out into other Teslas at this point. Anything that comes out of warranty that says Tesla on it will eventually end up at our shop because it's less expensive for us to repair these Teslas. And having said that, eventually the other guys are going to show up too. The Lucids, the Apteras, the Sola Mechanicas, the Neos. And the fundamental reason is none of these companies that are rapidly emerging in the space are going to be able to build their service delivery quickly enough to meet the demand as their production ramps up. And they're going to outsource. They're going to come to companies like us that have pre-existing experience in the EV world. So even though I was trying to make that a short answer, Anthony, it turned out to be a long answer, and I hope you enjoyed it.
That was the log line for the eventual movie that we'll make about this line.
Right.
That's awesome. Wow.
So I have something else for you guys here. Tesla is looking to expand its team working on Optimus Bot, the robot portion of Tesla. So they say if you want to work with me on teaching humanoid robots to do anything, follow this link. And this is the recruiter, of course. Here's what they're looking for. They're looking for people that can do deep learning manipulation with an engineering degree. And the position is in Palo Alto. And let me read you some of the skills that they're looking for. They're looking for people that can design and develop our learned robotic manipulation software stack and algorithms. There's kind of a mouthful. Develop robotic manipulation capabilities, including but not limited to the grasping and regrasping, pick up and place, and more dexterous behaviors to enable useful work in both structured and unstructured environments. That mouthful means they are looking for robots that can do fundamental assembly work and replace humans in certain functions. Dexterity, of course, being, using of hands or performing functions. And then finally, model robotic manipulation processes to enable analysis, simulation, planning, and controls. So it's a combination of software and mechanical skills. But if you think about this, we all went through school, high school, and eventually began to think about a career. This would be a cool career. This would be the type of job you'd probably get up every morning and say, I can't wait to get to work.
Oh, for sure. Oh, if you can, you should. Look, I built a chair yesterday, and I only used the instructions once.
Really? IKEA chair?
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. No, they do give you pretty good drawings, though, right?
I'm not a robotics expert, so if you can, you should check that out. That's awesome.
All right, guys, we're at an hour. We still have quite a few questions.
All right, let's go through some
little
questions
lightning round. Cool. Darren from YouTube, I heard a rumor that the Cybertruck could charge to 80% in 10 minutes with the 1 megawatt charging. Yep.
That's what we heard too, yeah.
I think that's been confirmed, really. And it's also been confirmed that the Cybertruck will be using that as well. Core Glass asked, if you keep making a battery more and more energy dense, you could basically end up with nuclear fuel. Basically, I guess.
Basically, yeah.
Maybe that's the trajectory. Maybe that's the future.
Mm-hmm.
Is a very, very small nuclear reactor in every car. They tried that once, didn't they? In the 50s, I think it was, that they wanted to experiment with nuclear technology in vehicles.
Don't remember that.
Yeah, something like that.
Well, YouTube Shorts. Welcome, guys. Fly Guy is asking, thanks, guys, or saying, thanks, guys. I have confidence to keep my Model S past 130,000 miles plus because of you guys.
Aw.
Thank you, Fly Guy.
MP 2021 on TikTok. Heard the new Fusion Power Tech had zero waste.
Sounds promising. Yeah, that does sound promising.
Sounds promising.
We're going to have to do some research on that because that's the second question this morning.
There's a great channel called Undecided with Matt Farrell that covers a lot of that stuff, as well as 2-Bit Da Vinci. Those are two great channels to check out updates on Fusion Tech and things. Core Glass wanted to know what your thoughts on inboard motors in wheels for aftermarket conversions. Hey, here's an idea. So let's say I take my 20-year-old Lexus and I want to throw in some onboard motors in the wheels.
Well, the first
engine out.
the first answer that comes to mind is efficiency. I mean, we're getting rid of the gears and the conversions, and it seems to be a far more efficient way to create rotary energy. Yeah, we're all for it. I guess that's the answer, Core Glass.
Yeah, that would be great for me, especially. I mean, the day where I got to gut out my whole car, but I want to keep it, and I can throw in. Right now, the solution is you throw in just a single
TikTok,
motor.
Oceania,
From Thailand.
Thailand. Welcome.
Hello,
TikTok.
you're on
Yeah.
TikTok. Hi. TikTok Bill Wood, Better Road Trip is coming to Key West. Yeah, hook you up with some key lime pie. Hey,
That sounds like a deal, Bill.
let's do it. From Mart on YouTube, do you know when the Tesla Cybertruck will begin production and release date? Great story on VIN 507.
507. You know, everything we're hearing is 2023. They're not quite giving us a month yet. But as we said in the last podcast, we are beginning to realize that the Tesla service centers are installing new lifts. They're making that investment for the Cybertruck because it has different dimensions and different weights. So with that going on, I would say that the release is imminent.
Mart also asked, what's the expected typical battery pack life for a non-Roadster model?
I
guess it depends,
we get
right?
asked that often. No one knows yet. That's a simple answer. As I pointed out, J.B. Strobel, the CTO of Tesla for 14 years, has one of the oldest Tesla Roadster. It's going on 14, 15 years now, and he said, we're amazed. This was a 10-year a design life for this cylindrical 18650 battery pack, and many are still going strong. The same technology exists in the Model S's. We just simply don't know yet, and we don't know how they will fail. Will it be mass cell failure overnight? Will it be like lemmings in the sea where every time you drive it, you're losing a bunch of cells? We just don't know, and we're looking forward to finding out.
Another quick comment from Dormand on Instagram. Will charging at a higher amperage reduce battery life? The answer is typically yes. That puts a lot of strain on the battery, and it tends to lower your range because you're essentially forcing more energy through those anodes and cathodes and degrading that material. Freckles on YouTube wants to see 507.
507, yeah.
Mart also asks, when do you all when do you all do when do you all do lives this year, and when will you be live next year?
You know, one of the things we started to do, Mart, this is a YouTube question. We're going to be doing more live sessions in the shop area and just simply popping them up on TikTok, YouTube, and some of the Shorts channels, especially when we have meaningful activity taking place because we're able to capture it live. The arrival of VIN 507 will probably be one of those events where we've got our social media guys with cameras documenting blow by blow.
That's going to be tons of fun.
Yeah.
One last comment then from Instagram, from Mr. Tesla Canada. Love key lime, long live the Roadster.
You know, that's Patrick Pinsalt. How are you, Patrick? Mr. Tesla Canada. His Roadster is here in storage right now. He has a radiant red, and whenever he comes to Phoenix, he loves driving the car. He's also working on a video that is going to be quite spectacular. It's called A Tipping Point, and I hope I can talk about this, Patrick. It is a collection of historical footnotes regarding what caused the EV revolution, and the premise with this video is he thinks we're at the tipping point now where EVs are going to take over and ICE vehicles are beginning to decline. So we're looking forward to that video, Patrick, and thanks for joining us on Instagram.
And thank you, everybody, for joining us on all of our platforms, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram especially. Thank you so much for commenting, guys. Reminder, again, we're probably going to be changing, I say probably, we're going to be changing the time of our show starting in the new year. We want to let you all know now. We're going to be backing it up 1 hour. So be sure to join us in the new year in our 1 hour delay. But until then, be sure to keep checking us out. 8:30 a.m. Mountain Standard Time every Tuesday, Thursday. Again, that's 8:30 Mountain Standard Time every Tuesday, Thursday.
Well, thank you for joining us. And yeah, any questions you may have in the meantime, feel free to email them to ev@gruber.com. We are available, and we really enjoy having you visit us for these podcasts. Thank you.